In the middle of the 1850s, Europe stood on the verge of a scientific awakening. Yet beneath the flickering gas lamps of Parisian laboratories, two rival visions of life and disease quietly waged war. In a cluttered lab, Louis Pasteur, an ambitious chemist with a gift for persuasion, peered into his flasks and declared to the world that sickness was an invasion, the body a passive battlefield, the microbe a relentless enemy. With each elegant experiment, broth that would not spoil if germs were kept at bay, he armed physicians with a clear mission to hurt the germ, kill the germ, block the germ. From rabies to anthrax, his successes became the bedrock of a new medical empire. Yet in a quieter corner, Antoine Béchamp, a meticulous professor of chemistry and biology, saw the same hidden realm through a subtler lens. He too studied the tiny particles dancing in the blood and tissues, but he concluded that they were not alien assailants. They were nature's recyclers and builders, microzymas that constructed healthy tissue or, when the body decayed, transformed into bacteria to break it down. To Béchamp, the presence of germs and disease was like vultures circling a carcass, evidence of death, not its cause. His argument was startling. If the body's terrain, the balance of its fluids, cells, and vitality, was pure and robust, no germ can gain a foothold. Pollution, poor food, stagnant air, and moral neglect poisoned the terrain and invited illness. Clean the terrain, nourish the host, and the so-called enemy would vanish for lack of a battlefield. I want to take a quick moment to talk about the implications of each of these two concepts. With terrain theory, personal health becomes primarily self-determined. Terrain theory says that disease arises when the body's internal environment or terrain is compromised due to poor nutrition, toxins, stress, unhealthy habits. And microbes, like bacteria or viruses, are viewed more as opportunistic cleaners or consequences of poor terrain, not the primary cause. With terrain theory, you become chiefly responsible for creating and maintaining a healthy terrain through diet, lifestyle, detoxification, stress management, and natural living. Responsibility shifts from avoiding germs to cultivating resilience. Also, there's less reliance on external medical interventions. Germ theory focuses on germs as the primary threat. Solutions include vaccines, antibiotics, sanitization, and social measures to block the spread. Terrain theory prioritizes strengthening the body over attacking germs. And there's implications that come with this. People may choose to minimize or reject intervention, like routine vaccinations, antibiotics for mild infections, or excessive sanitization. There's more of an emphasis on holistic, natural, or alternative remedies. The individuals bear more responsibility to discern what treatments align with their terrain-focused view. And of course, the biggest issue would be the community and public health responsibility. Germ theory advocates would likely feel as though everyone is responsible for not only their own health, but also for preventing the transmission of disease to others, isolating when you're sick, wearing masks, herd immunity, things of that nature. Whereas the terrain theory advocates would feel as though outside of bacterial infection, that contagion or viral infection is nothing more than a myth. If your terrain is healthy, you won't catch disease. Obviously, the implications of this would be mighty. One might feel less obligated to follow public measures meant to reduce contagion, or responsibility shifts inward, keep your terrain healthy, and others must do the same. Of course, this leads to ethical and social tensions in practical reality. If someone follows terrain theory rigorously, they might resist vaccination, antibiotics, quarantine rules. This can clash with public health norms, and it's all based on germ theory. And the implications are possible conflict between personal beliefs and community norms, legal or workplace challenges, debates over individual freedom versus collective safety. Another major misunderstanding is with bacteria. According to terrain theory, the vast majority of bacteria, over 95%, are considered beneficial or neutral because the theory emphasizes the importance of the internal environment of the body in determining health. Instead of seeing microbes as the root cause of disease, as in germ theory, terrain theory posits that bacteria primarily serve supporting roles in the body and only become problematic when the terrain is imbalanced or toxic. Bacteria are essential for life. They aid in digestion, synthesize vitamins, regulate immunity, and maintain homeostasis. Microbes, they respond to their environment. When the body is healthy, bacteria help maintain balance. When the terrain becomes toxic due to poor diet, stress, pollution, etc., bacteria may multiply or shift roles to break down and remove waste, a process that is commonly mistaken as infection. There is this symbiotic relationship. Most bacteria coexist with humans in a mutually beneficial relationship, and their presence is a sign of life in balance, not a threat. Getting back to talking about Antoine Béchamp and Louis Pasteur, as Pasteur's fame soared, Béchamp's warnings fell on deaf ears, yet his insights hinted at a larger truth. If we blame germs alone, society might overlook the real root of disease: poverty, poor sanitation, malnutrition, toxic industry. Germ theory, for all of its triumphs, risked becoming a convenient excuse for ignoring deeper social rot. Decades passed. Vaccines and antibiotics conquered the ancient scourges. Surgery became safer. Hospitals no longer reeked of pus and death. Germ theory had delivered miracles, but it also left a blind spot. Chronic diseases, autoimmunity, and antibiotic resistance rose in its wake. Many forgot that human health was more than the absence of a germ. It was the resilience of the whole organism. I started to wonder, why haven't we ever been taught about this in school? And who would benefit from suppressing such information? Well, wealthy elites and powerful industrialists had every reason to promote germ theory over terrain theory, not because it was more scientifically sound, but because it served their financial and social agendas. And here's why. You could profit from fear. Germ theory turned invisible microbes into invisible enemies. Their fear-based model justified a never-ending cycle of medical intervention, fueling the pharmaceutical industry. If disease came from external germs, then the solution had to be external drugs, vaccines, and antiseptics, all which could be patented and sold. They could control you through medicine by making people believe their health depended on doctors and medicine, not their lifestyle, nutrition, or environment. Elites could turn health into a profitable, centralized system. Terrain theory, which emphasizes self-responsibility and natural healing, would disempower the system and reduce dependency. These people would have every incentive to suppress natural healing. Terrain theory promotes clean air, nutrient-dense food, detoxification, and natural remedies, none of which can be monopolized or patented. The ruling class had no financial interest in promoting clean water and natural healing when there's more money in selling cures than in preventing disease. And that's just one side of the coin. You can have industrial expansion without blame. Germ theory conveniently shifted the blame away from toxic working conditions, industrial pollution, and poor sanitation, the real culprits in many of the 19th century disease outbreaks. With germ theory, factory owners and city planners could avoid accountability by blaming bacteria instead of the toxic environments they created. Essentially, what these people have done is they have laid the foundation for medical tyranny. Germ theory laid the ideological groundwork for mass vaccination campaigns, lockdowns, and biosurveillance, all of which grant enormous power to governments and corporations under the guise of public health. In short, germ theory wasn't just a scientific model, it was a strategic weapon for profit, control, and suppression of natural medicine. By crushing terrain theory, the rich secured a monopoly not only over medicine, but over how people think about their bodies, their health, and their freedom. In conclusion, the triumph of germ theory wasn't merely a scientific shift. It was a calculated move by the powerful to control health, profit from disease, and suppress a model of healing that empowered individuals. By sidelining terrain theory, the elite ensured that medicine became a tool of commerce and compliance, not true wellness. Understanding this agenda is the first step in reclaiming our health and our autonomy.